Hi, welcome back. So for this video, I want to think about what can we learn about fiction and how can didactic stories from the past help us see the world in new ways? What if we use tarot to tell the story? So for this video, let's take a look at two magic scenes in the episodic Libro del Caballero Cifar, or the Book of the Knight Cifar. It's a 14th century text divided into four parts. It's didactic in nature, and it demonstrates the many highs and lows of knighthood. So while it's written in Spanish for a Christian audience, there's a lot of underlining Arabic and Islamic influences. I go into a few of them in my book, but for this video, like the rest, I want to focus more so on the story itself and possible life lessons that we can get out of it with the help of tarot cards. So specifically, the two scenes I want to focus on are the one in the sulfuric lake and the one in the Fortunate Isles. So the first takes place about halfway through the text and the latter more near the end. So in the first, an unnamed Caballero atrevido, or bold knight, who's giving us lots of wand energy, is camping outside a lake where a beautiful woman appears and invites him to join her in her kingdom. And this world is underwater. It's marvelous. It's filled with beautiful people, stunning architecture, shining jewels. There's prize horses. It's miraculous. And the knight is astounded by this. And at one point, they agree that they're going to get married. So at their wedding ceremony, he's just astounded by all this marvelous things that's happening around him. And he asks the mistress, like, how are they doing this? What's going on? And she answers by saying, quote, "For things that were accomplished over a long time and with great study cannot be learned in a day." So essentially telling him to kind of calm down, stop asking questions, and just admire it because it's hard to explain something difficult. So what this quote makes me think of is the Seven of Pentacles. So it's about the idea of patience, of working hard, of trying to hone in one's skills, and understanding that if you want to be really good at something, you can't just learn that in a day. So there's no way that this bold knight could learn how to climb the sun rays as these people were doing in this underwater realm by just asking and getting a quick answer. So sometimes there aren't quick fixes, and we need to just be patient and wait for the things that we've cultivated to grow and wait for our skills to level up. So within this underwater world, part of what makes it marvelous is the abundance of strange things and interesting rules. So for example, in this kingdom, animals and humans are born and mature within 7 days. And then 7 days later, they're fully grown. So for example, and beyond that, the citizens in the underwater realm are not allowed to speak to the bold knight, this new king, for 7 weeks. And they need to remain silent, but have to obey all of his commands. So they can't say no to him, but they can't speak to him. And he's encouraged to not speak back to them. So what happens is that he's allowed to remain king of this world with this woman, this mistress, right? His new wife, as long as he follows some rules. And one of the rules is that he always stay by her side and not talk to any other woman but her, and to stay faithful. So he says, sure, I can do that. That's fine. And then eventually they have a son. So he's conceived, then 7 days later, he's born. 7 days later, he's a grown man. So then one day, the bold knight and his son are wandering around the kingdom, just kind of to get to know the lay of the land, getting to know each other. And they encounter a beautiful woman. And the bold knight is taken aback by her, and he wants to sleep with her. So then he asks that happen. And of course, she can't say no, really. And so that happens. They come back and they encounter his wife, or this mistress, and there we see her true identity, and she kind of reveals herself as to be in this frightening devil, and she's known as the Señora de la Traición, or the mistress of treachery. So angered by what happened, she expels both him and their son from the kingdom. So note that she doesn't kill them, she just expels them out of this wonderful world that has a little bit of deception in it. And mind you, they were riding horses. So she expels both her son and her husband out of this world, along with the horses they are riding. And those horses transform into a pig and a goat, and they land on the shore. And then it ends by the bold knight meeting with his meeting with his men, and he explains what happened, and he feels that he's been there in this world for a long time. And they just discuss, and they're like, it can't be that you have a son. Doesn't make sense. And he explains, and ultimately the narrator concludes this section of the story by telling us, quote, that no one should believe or place himself in the power of a person that he doesn't know. And although the person may speak flatteringly or make wild promises, for by chance one may wind up scorned and in a dangerous place. Ultimately, this kind of speaks of the devil card, the more shadowy side of the devil, the idea of temptation, of being led astray, of being tempted by carnal desires, of pleasures, and marvelous things that aren't exactly what they seem. So keep in mind that they were on two really prized horses, and it turns out they're actually just a pig and a goat, so they're not so marvelous after all. So essentially that looks can be deceiving, and that what you think something is might not be exactly what it is. So just kind of this warning of not taking things at face value and putting some doubt into what people tell you and why they're telling it to you. And if something seems too good to be true, perhaps it is. But then curiously, the story of the night Zifar then gets more complicated, because that seems to be one of the messages, is don't believe what you see. But then many chapters and books later, so the last part of the text, we're encountered with another magical scene, and it does call back to the sulfuric lake. So what we have here is a moment that is, again, divides the real world and the magical world. But at this time, it says that unlike the sulfuric lake, what happens in this enchanted isles, or these fortunate isles, is true and should be believed, and it's not false. So here we have Roboin, who is Zifar's son. And mind you that the bold knight from the first episode, we only encounter him in that moment. So it's just like the story about a chivalric knight. And then Roboin we see multiple times, and he is the son of Cifar. And the whole point of the Libro Caballero Cifar is to tell tales of how one should be a good knight, how to be a good person, right? And the idea is that Cifar wanted to teach his sons some lessons. So then eventually we get to see what his sons do. So here we have Roboin. So Roboin here goes on a rudderless boat and passes through some tunnels, and he enters into this world. And this world is governed by an empress. She's beautiful. She's possibly the daughter of a fairy, has some backstories kind of echo back to Arthurian romances and chivalric tales, and even some Arabic stories, perhaps. So there's all these like different overlaps that could be happening. And but what happens in this particular scene is that the Empress, she can know everyone's past the moment they enter her realm, but she can't see the future. So she knows all about this night, but she can't predict what will happen. So similarly to what happens with the bold knight and the mistress, Roboin ends up marrying the Empress. And again, there are certain rules and conditions to him staying there. So the main one is that he needs to go through a whole year with being faithful to the Empress. And if he manages to do that, then he can stay and be emperor forever, and they can rule happily ever after, right? But so what happens 3 days before their anniversary, the devil shows up. And this devil is disguised as a beautiful woman. And he tricks Roboin into being unfaithful. And then after they lay together, each time he tempts him into being like, you should ask the Empress for a gift. Ask for a hunting dog, a falcon, a prized horse. So each time they're together, he will come back and he'll ask the Empress, hey, you know what? I would really love to have a hunting dog. I hear that you have the best kind of hunting dog in the world. It would make me so happy if I could have it. So the Empress warns him that he needs to be careful, right? That she says, I wouldn't want you to be devious in these requests, for at times he who thinks to deceive another is himself deceived. So this makes us think about the Five of Swords. So you might be winning, but at what price? So essentially, she's warning him to be careful, to not try and take too much advantage of what's going on to try to get the upper hand, because while he might win all of these swords, what's the price to winning them? And he doesn't know yet, but he's going to find out soon that the price isn't exactly what he wants. So she's trying to warn him to not have this happen. And mind you, the Empress has seen this happen before. So it's not the first time that she's put her heart into someone and then watched the devil or someone come in and disrupt what could have been happiness for her. So she's trying to warn him, hey, be careful. So then later, and ultimately, he kept asking, and she says, well, you need to leave. You can't be here. I'm sorry, you asked too many times. The conditions of our partnership weren't met. You need to leave. And I hope that our son will look for you when he's older. So he leaves this magical kingdom and he's very sad about it. And he realizes the mistake that he made. And she is left very sad and heartbroken and pregnant. And so they're separated forever, and she closes off the walls of her kingdom so no other mortal can enter this world. So what the narrator then tells us is that you should not leave what you have gained for what you might gain, or what is done for what you might do, nor should you trade delight for misery. For the enemy gives the appearance of good and love, but puts man in danger and dishonor. So it's kind of like a combination of the devil and the Nine of Pentacles. So in the Nine of Pentacles, what we have here is a woman who is able to enjoy the fruits of her labor and be happy with what she has and not necessarily seek more. It's not that you shouldn't be ambitious and that you shouldn't be looking outward for better things, but that you shouldn't be blinded, thinking about the falcon with his blinders on and the idea that there's a hunting bird here with her. You shouldn't be blinded by the promise that there's more value if you let go of what you have and forget about the value of things that you already do have. So don't let temptation convince you into thinking that all the things that you have are not valuable, because you might end up losing what you value most, but you weren't giving enough attention to. So then what this leads us to is this final commentary from the narrator. And what he says is that although greed for things he could easily have gone without if he had wanted to, the wretch lost the good fortune and the honor he had obtained. And therefore they say that he who does not plan ahead may fall backwards. So here we have kind of a combination of the Seven of Cups and the Temperance card. So what Roboin was not able to do is to show temperance, to show modesty, to be mindful of both what he has and what he hopes to gain and kind of mix them well together. He was just far too tempted by all the possibilities. And sometimes when we have too many options, too many directions we can go, we have a tendency to want to overindulge, and then that causes consequences. So I'm not saying that we shouldn't seek better things, but that we need to be mindful to not fall into the trap of quick fixes and not plan ahead and not think about the consequences and not think out, okay, but am I blinded by this shiny thing and not realizing I have other shiny things? Or is this a shiny thing that would benefit me in a way that will not deter value from what I already have? So that's some taking about these two stories. And mind you that in this second scene with the Fortunate Isles, it makes a direct callback to the sulfuric lake, implying that what happened in that world was false and manipulative, but what happened here was truthful. But in both cases, we have some kind of devil that is causing some temptation and making us fall astray. And what happens in this fiction is that since these two worlds are removed from the less magical, disenchanted world of the knights, what the two knights, Roboin and the Bold Knight, experience in those worlds serves a didactic purpose. They messed up, but they learn from it, and they're able to continue living and take the wisdom that they got from those experiences and apply them moving forward with consequences, but limited consequences, because they're in this other magical world that's separated from the normal material world that they were in. So I'm going to end it with throwing back one more question. So what else can we learn from these two stories within the Libro de Caballero Cifar and with the cards that I pulled? Leave your comments below. Thank you for watching.